more of a support. Let me back up. The driving blog in Rob's thoughts. Let me repeat. The driving blog in Rob's thoughts. More of support to the essence of great thinking can be injected to the idea of the guidance and the default of how human behavior functions. For example, speaking of default, I tend to look to nature, as well as many other individuals within the science community or whatever type of community you're in. Science, nature, or shall I say, nature is a good default mechanism to finding solutions. That being said, let's look at this. If you have a very pristine environment, whereas you've eliminated a vast majority of the microorganisms that exist within that environment, it's not going to be conducive for the organism living in that environment to survive outside of that bubble. And speaking of the bubbles, everyone knows the story about or everyone may have saw a movie, several years ago about the boy in the bubble. An actor who played this individual that lived in a pristine environment, and if he got out of the environment that was ideally not germ-free, he would not survive. Okay, let's look at that on a smaller molecular level, meaning germs. Going back to that, you need to have resistance to various sorts of outside foreign invaders, per se. And if you do not have resistance, if the bad bacteria and the good bacteria cannot have that fervor or that feudalism or that fight to make the environment balanced, not necessarily, pure, then anything that is living in that pristine environment cannot survive. Okay, let's flash forward that sort of paradigm with human behavior. Human behavior is the same way. We cannot, let's say, for example, raise a kid or basically cultivate any organism in an environment where everything is pristine and nice. We can't always say, hey, this is a good... In other words, we can't raise them in an environment where everything is rose-colored glasses. In other words, you have to condition or build up a resistance to the foreign types of actions that exist within society. If you're saying, well, I'm going to raise such and such where he does not see these things, that's not necessarily good, because then when he gets outside of the quote-unquote bubble of the woes of life, then it's going to be very, very hard for that individual to adjust to or become resistant to that behavior that they're not accustomed to. In other words, you can't have a 99.9% pure environment of Pollyannish, this is nice, this is good. This sums it up by, we have to use gray thought to basically cultivate, the environment. They need to see the best of both worlds. We need the bad bacteria and the good bacteria to have a fight. And I know that word is sort of harsh, but in essence we do. And life is like that. We look how our kids grow up. They have to be in an environment where they see a great paradigm, so there are no surprises and they can survive outside the bubble. This is a long driving vlog, and again, it's a culmination of Rob's thoughts, and I am driving, and in essence, it's affectionately entitled The Driving Vlog and Rob's Thoughts. Watch out for that 99.9% pure Think Gray.